I never thought a simple Monday morning could spiral into chaos, but here I am, and you're about to see why. Before I dive in, if you've ever had a coworker secretly sabotage you, leave a comment. I want to know I'm not alone. My name is Alex, and I work at a mid-sized marketing firm in Chicago. On my team, there's Jenna, our polished account manager who everyone seems to adore, and Mark, the quiet IT specialist who has an unnerving habit of hovering when no one is looking. Everything seemed normal until last week, when a major client campaign went live, and I noticed discrepancies that didn't make sense. I had spent hours crafting the strategy deck, checking every metric twice, but when the campaign report hit my inbox, several key slides had been altered. At first, I assumed it was a harmless mistake, maybe Mark trying to help with formatting. But the more I checked, the more I realized these weren't accidental tweaks, they were subtle shifts designed to make me look unprepared. I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe I was overreacting. But then Jenna popped by my desk with a forced smile and said, "Funny, the client mentioned a few things that weren't in your deck." Weird, huh? My stomach sank. I had a feeling this Monday was about to get a lot worse, and I had no idea who I could trust. Something told me this was just the beginning of a much larger problem. By Tuesday, the tension in the office was palpable. Every time I walked past Mark's desk, he would give me a polite nod that felt more like a warning. Jenna, on the other hand, was suddenly full of unsolicited advice, pointing out things I might have missed in front of other team members. I started keeping a private log of every email, Slack message, and meeting note, just in case, but even that felt like a game of chasing shadows. The first real pressure came when the client emailed with concerns about missing deliverables. I knew I had submitted everything on time, so I immediately pulled my files, timestamps, and audit logs. Nothing was missing on my end. Yet Jenna casually mentioned during lunch, "Maybe you need to double-check your workflow. Things get lost sometimes." Her tone wasn't helpful, it was deliberate. Meanwhile, Mark had access to our shared drives, and I noticed odd file activity late at night. Reports I had finalized were suddenly renamed or moved to folders no one else seemed to touch. It was subtle, but the pattern was growing, and I couldn't ignore it. By Wednesday afternoon, the team began whispering about a communication issue in my department. I could feel the walls closing in. Something, or someone, was systematically undermining me, and I had no proof yet. Then my phone buzzed with a new email from the client that made my blood run cold. The client's email was curt, several key deliverables were missing or inconsistent, and they were requesting an urgent call with my manager. I reread my timestamps and attachments 3 times. Everything was in order. Panic started creeping in as I realized this wasn't just about a single mistake, it was about creating the appearance that I was incompetent. By Thursday, every small task felt like walking through a minefield. Jenna suddenly offered to sit in on all my client calls, claiming she wanted to help me stay on top of things. Mark's presence became even more unsettling. He would casually comment, "Funny, the reports seem different from yesterday," while pretending to be concerned. Each interaction felt calculated, like I was being tested, and I didn't know what the test was. I started cross-referencing logs from Slack, email, and our shared drive, trying to find evidence of tampering. Hours of work revealed tiny, almost imperceptible edits in documents, emails sent late at night from Mark's computer, folders renamed after Jenna had been in the office, and even a client message that seemed to have been forwarded from a draft I never sent. The pressure wasn't just professional anymore, it was personal. Every glance from a coworker felt suspicious, every hallway conversation sounded like a trap. By Friday morning, I was mentally exhausted but determined. I needed to catch whoever was behind this before it destroyed my credibility. And then I noticed something that made my stomach drop, something I never expected from Jenna. Friday started with a sinking feeling I couldn't shake. I discovered an email thread buried deep in our shared account. Jenna had been forwarding sensitive campaign details to an external address I didn't recognize. My heart raced. If the client noticed, it could mean lost accounts, lost revenue, and a permanent stain on my record. Suddenly, this wasn't just subtle sabotage, it was full-blown betrayal. I tried to confront Mark first, thinking maybe he was involved. His response was calm, almost too calm. "I don't touch other people's work, Alex. But you know, things do get messy around here." That vague comment made me more suspicious than ever. Meanwhile, Jenna smiled her usual polished smile in meetings, acting as if nothing were wrong, but the email evidence was damning. On top of that, HR announced a surprise audit of our campaign files to ensure compliance with client contracts. The timing couldn't have been worse. I spent the entire morning preparing, double and triple checking every document, every timestamp. It felt like a race against time, and I wasn't sure who my allies were. Then, during the audit, I noticed an unusual login pattern. Late-night access from an office terminal I didn't recognize, coinciding perfectly with the times files had been altered. My stomach sank as I realized the sabotage wasn't random. Whoever was doing this knew exactly how to cover their tracks, and I was running out of time to catch them. And just when I thought I had a handle on it, the audit revealed something that made everything worse. The audit uncovered a critical discrepancy. A high-priority client deck had been altered after submission, and the version the client received didn't match our internal files. My heart sank. This wasn't just about minor edits anymore, it was about someone deliberately undermining me in front of a paying client. Jenna claimed she must have uploaded the wrong file, but her explanation didn't match the timestamps. Every detail pointed toward careful manipulation. I spent the afternoon tracing every login, every file transfer, and every forwarded email. Mark, as usual, acted nonchalant, almost like he was daring me to figure it out. But I noticed something strange, a deleted Slack thread between Jenna and an external email address, one I didn't recognize. Whoever it was, they were trying to erase evidence, but they'd left just enough for me to notice. Pressure mounted as my manager demanded answers. I had to provide a full report within hours or risk being blamed for the mistakes. My mind raced. Was this about sabotage, negligence, or something far bigger? Every second felt like a trap, and every step I took toward the truth only made me more paranoid. I knew I couldn't confront anyone yet, not without undeniable proof. I needed a plan, and fast. If you've ever faced betrayal at work, leave a comment, I want to hear your story. And then, late that evening, I found something in the audit logs that changed everything. Late Friday evening, I stayed behind in the office, sifting through the audit logs. My eyes widened when I noticed multiple access points I had never seen before, each one corresponding to files that had been tampered with. What was worse, these logins were traced to credentials I knew were only assigned to senior staff, but no one had officially used them during those hours. Someone was covering their tracks too well. The more I dug, the clearer it became that this wasn't a one-time mistake. Reports, client decks, even internal strategy documents, all subtly altered over the past month. The goal seemed obvious, make me look incompetent while keeping the changes just subtle enough to avoid immediate detection. I realized the stakes were higher than I'd imagined. If the client found out, our contract could be jeopardized. If my manager found out first, they might blame me. I tried to consider motives. Jenna's polished persona and her recent proximity to sensitive projects made her a prime suspect, but Mark's quiet, almost invisible presence suggested he could be the mastermind, or at least an accomplice. Every time I thought I had a theory, a new detail contradicted it, pulling me deeper into confusion. Exhausted but determined, I formulated a plan. I would need to catch the culprit red-handed, ideally during a file edit or unauthorized access. But the next day, as I was preparing my setup, something completely unexpected happened, something that made me question everything I thought I knew about Jenna and Mark. Monday morning, I arrived early, setting up my laptop to monitor the shared drive in real time. I was ready to catch whoever was manipulating files. But just as I was about to focus on the usual suspects, Jenna and Mark, an alert popped up. A file had been accessed remotely from my own account. My credentials. My heart skipped a beat. At first, I thought it was a technical glitch, but the timing was too precise. Someone was using my login to make unauthorized changes, and it wasn't Jenna or Mark, they were both in the office. Whoever it was had figured out a way to impersonate me. Suddenly, the entire situation flipped. I was no longer just trying to prove sabotage, I was defending myself from an invisible attacker who could frame me for everything. Panic mixed with determination. I immediately checked the email logs and found forwarded messages I had never sent. Someone had sent them using my account. I realized that any confrontation without solid evidence could backfire disastrously. I felt cornered, yet adrenaline kicked in. I needed to be clever, methodical, and patient. Now the stakes weren't just my reputation, my job and credibility were on the line. I had to uncover not only who was sabotaging the work but also who had infiltrated my account. And just when I thought I might have a clue, my phone buzzed with a Slack message from Jenna that made my blood run cold. The Slack message from Jenna was casual, almost easing. "Hey Alex, noticed some files looked off this morning. Weird, right?" Her timing was suspicious. Either she genuinely didn't know, or she knew far more than she was letting on. I couldn't tell which, and that uncertainty gnawed at me. By mid-morning, whispers spread through the office. Colleagues were curious, and some even sympathetic. But I noticed the subtle glances, the half-smiles that made me feel like everyone was silently picking sides. Mark, as usual, remained oddly quiet, but when I caught him staring at my screen, his expression was unreadable. Every interaction now felt like a potential trap, and I began questioning even my own instincts. I pulled the server logs again, tracing every access point. That's when I found it: an external VPN had been used to log in as me late at night. The footprint led back to a rented office space in the city. Whoever was doing this had resources, and they weren't just playing office politics, they were orchestrating a precise plan. I realized I couldn't confront Jenna or Mark yet. I needed more evidence, more certainty. But even as I mapped out my next steps, the tension in the office was becoming unbearable. The smallest mistake, even one I hadn't made, could be twisted against me. Comment below if you've ever felt trapped by someone at work. It's unnerving. And then, just as I thought I had a handle on the situation, a shocking new piece of evidence landed in my inbox. After reviewing the new evidence in my inbox, I realized I had the leverage I needed, but I had to act carefully. One wrong move, and the sabotage would be pinned on me. My plan was simple in theory: catch the culprit in the act while securing undeniable proof. I set up screen recordings of the shared drive, email filters to flag any unauthorized forwards, and alerts for unusual logins. Every detail had to be covered. I decided to focus on Jenna first. Her patterns were the most consistent with the initial tampering, and her access level gave her the ability to manipulate files without immediate detection. But I didn't want to confront her blindly. Instead, I scheduled a routine system review, inviting my manager to join virtually. This would give me a legitimate reason to monitor changes without raising suspicion. Mark was trickier. He rarely interacted directly with the files, but his late-night presence had always unsettled me. I set up badge scan alerts to see if he was entering restricted areas after hours. If he was involved, this would reveal it. By the end of the day, everything was in place. I felt a mixture of anxiety and determination. The next move would either expose the saboteur or backfire spectacularly. And just as I reviewed the setup one last time, a file alert popped up on my screen. Someone was active in the system right now. I froze as the alert flashed. Someone was modifying a critical client file in real time. My heart pounded. I quickly traced the action. It was Jenna. Every keystroke, every edit, was being recorded on my screen. I called my manager into the virtual review, keeping my voice calm, though my pulse raced. "Looks like some changes are happening," I said casually, masking the urgency. Jenna glanced at her monitor, then at me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of panic cross her face. She tried to justify the edits, claiming she was correcting formatting errors, but the timestamps in my screen recordings told a different story. At the same time, Mark appeared at his desk, pretending to notice nothing, but the badge scan alerts confirmed he had entered the office after hours the previous week. He had helped Jenna cover her tracks. The realization hit me like a punch: this wasn't a solo effort. It was a carefully coordinated scheme to undermine me. With evidence in hand, I calmly documented everything, letting my manager review the records. Jenna's smile vanished, replaced by stiff, uncomfortable silence. Mark avoided eye contact. The entire office seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next move. I knew the confrontation was only the beginning. The fallout would be messy, and not everyone would walk away unscathed. And just as the manager leaned back, I noticed an unexpected message appear in my inbox that threatened to complicate everything again. The following day, HR scheduled an emergency meeting. Jenna and Mark were called in separately, and I was asked to present the evidence. I laid out every log, every email, every screenshot, and every badge scan alert. The room was silent as HR absorbed the full scope of the sabotage. Jenna tried to defend herself, claiming she didn't realize the impact, but the documentation was airtight. Mark's role as an accomplice became clear when the badge scans and VPN logs were reviewed. Both were placed on administrative leave pending further investigation. The client, fortunately, was impressed by our transparency and swift resolution, and no contracts were lost. The office atmosphere shifted dramatically. Colleagues whispered less suspiciously now, and my credibility was restored. But the experience left a lingering sense of vigilance. I realized just how fragile trust could be, even in a familiar environment. While the immediate danger had passed, there were lessons I had to remember: vigilance, documentation, and the importance of verifying even the most trusted coworkers. Betrayal could be subtle, methodical, and painfully effective. Even as the office returned to normal, I knew some of the subtle tensions would never fully disappear. But one thing was clear, karma had its way of catching up, and the saboteurs had learned a hard lesson. And then, I received a final unexpected email that would tie up the loose ends and reveal the true depth of the scheme. The final email confirmed what I had suspected. Jenna and Mark had been motivated not only by jealousy but by a potential financial incentive from a competing agency. The client had been targeted for a subtle poaching attempt, and the two had hoped to create chaos that would make me look incompetent, opening the door for outside influence. Reading the details, I felt a mix of vindication and relief. HR finalized their report, and both Jenna and Mark faced disciplinary action, including termination. The client appreciated the transparency and continued their contract, even complimenting my diligence under pressure. My manager praised my patience, investigative instincts, and methodical documentation, qualities that not only saved the account but also reinforced my professional reputation. The office learned a hard lesson about trust and oversight. Simple assumptions about colleagues could be dangerous, and the importance of internal checks and communication became a top priority in management discussions. I walked away with renewed confidence and a clear understanding: vigilance and integrity were non-negotiable in the workplace. Reflecting on the ordeal, I realized that sabotage often comes from where you least expect it, and attention to detail can be the only safeguard. The moral was clear: even in a seemingly supportive environment, trust must be earned, and evidence always matters. Comment below, have you ever had to prove your integrity under pressure? I'd love to hear your story. With that, the saga ended, but the lessons stayed with me forever. In the weeks following the incident, the office atmosphere shifted noticeably. Colleagues became more cautious, double-checking work and communications. Team meetings included discussions about documentation, audits, and accountability, and management implemented stricter protocols for file access and client communications. While the immediate tension eased, subtle reminders of the sabotage lingered: quick glances, hushed conversations, and occasional whispers about what really happened. Interestingly, some team members who had previously been distant started approaching me for advice. They admired the way I handled the situation calmly and methodically, and it gave me an unexpected sense of influence and leadership. I realized that integrity and patience can turn a crisis into an opportunity to earn respect. At the same time, Jenna and Mark's absence became a cautionary tale. People were reminded that shortcuts, manipulation, or betrayal, even if they seem clever at the moment, often carry consequences. HR emphasized transparency and reporting, encouraging employees to speak up if something felt off. Even though the immediate chaos had passed, I stayed vigilant. Every notification, every email, every late-night login now carried a sense of awareness I hadn't felt before. I had learned the hard way that workplace drama rarely resolves quietly, it leaves echoes. And just when I thought the office had settled, a surprising, almost comical incident reminded everyone of how fragile reputation and trust could be, keeping the memory of the ordeal alive. A month later, the office had mostly returned to its normal rhythm, but subtle reminders of the sabotage lingered. One day, during a casual meeting, a misdirected email intended for a vendor accidentally landed in the wrong inbox. Everyone froze, half expecting another crisis. Laughter soon followed, and it served as a reminder that even the most tense environments could find moments of levity. I reflected on everything that had happened: the emails, the VPN logins, the whispered suspicions, and the careful observation that saved my reputation. The ordeal had taught me lessons no manual could provide: vigilance isn't paranoia, patience can be a weapon, and integrity is your best defense against hidden threats. The team's respect had shifted subtly but undeniably. People now looked to me as someone who could handle pressure without panic, someone who documented carefully and thought several steps ahead. I realized that the experience had strengthened my professional presence in ways I hadn't anticipated. Yet, despite all the lessons learned, I remained aware that office dynamics are unpredictable. Trust is earned daily, and even the most polished colleagues could have hidden motives. Being cautious didn't make me cynical, it made me prepared. And as I shut down my computer that evening, a small notification popped up on my screen, an innocuous reminder that vigilance, once learned, never truly leaves you. By the end of the quarter, everything had been fully resolved. Jenna and Mark were officially terminated, the client retained their trust in our team, and management implemented permanent safeguards to prevent similar sabotage in the future. The office had learned hard lessons about accountability, oversight, and the importance of vigilance. For me, the experience reinforced the value of documentation, patience, and staying composed under pressure. I understood that even in seemingly supportive workplaces, hidden agendas can exist, and preparedness is the best defense. Karma had caught up with the saboteurs, and integrity had triumphed in the end. Reflecting on the entire ordeal, the moral is clear: never underestimate the power of careful observation and meticulous record-keeping. Trust must be earned, and a calm, methodical approach can turn a potential disaster into proof of competence. Comment below: have you ever faced workplace sabotage, and how did you handle it? I'd love to hear your story. With the lessons learned in the office finally at peace, I could finally move forward, confident, vigilant, and ready for whatever came next.